Have you ever considered how some really ancient stories might give us, well, insights into the very earliest human history? Stuff like creation, big choices, even global events. Oh, and what about giants? Today, we're doing a deep dive into this fascinating source material called BibleStories.pdf. Our goal here is to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising details from these foundational stories, and give you a kind of condensed but thorough understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. In this deep dive, we'll be walking through these narratives pretty much chronologically, starting with creation, the first humans. Then we'll look at some pivotal choices they made, the consequences, and this really curious part about giants appearing on Earth, and of course the Great Flood, that huge event. After that, we see how humanity sort of restarts and faces new challenges, like that famous power story. So you'll get a really solid grasp of how these stories flow, how they connect, and the big themes they keep hitting on things about humanity, our choices, and according to these texts, our relationship with a higher power. It definitely makes you think, doesn't it? How do these old accounts frame that whole idea of choice and consequence?
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. The Genesis, according to this source, BibleStories.pdf says God kicked things off, creating the heavens, the earth, sun, moon, stars, all of it. But here's something I found really interesting right off the bat. Before the physical stuff, the source talks about unseen spirit persons, angels. And it says they were actually involved, like
Wow.
helping God shape the universe.
That's right. And the Earth itself, initially. The source describes it as, well, formless, covered in water, dark. God then starts preparing it, bringing light, separating water from land, basically setting the stage meticulously before any plants or animals showed up.
And then comes the decoration phase, you could say. God makes the earth beautiful grass, plants, trees everywhere, fills the sky with birds, the waters with fish, land with animals, big and small. And the text keeps repeating this phrase. Very good. Everything was just right in perfect harmony.
hmm And within that very good world, there's this special focus on the Garden of Eden. It's described as, well, perfect. But what's fascinating is the purpose behind it. Eden wasn't just a nice spot. It was meant to be the model, the starting point for the entire Earth to eventually become just as beautiful. That's a pretty grand vision.
Right. And into this perfect blueprint come the first humans. The source explains God forms Adam, the first man, from dust. And then while Adam's asleep, God makes Eve, the first woman, using one of Adam's ribs. They're placed right there in Eden.
Yeah, and their job, as the source lays it out, was pretty huge.
Hmm.
They were meant to basically expand Eden's perfection across the whole planet. The idea was they'd live happily forever, have kids, and just make the entire Earth this beautiful, perfect place.
Okay, so perfect garden, perfect setup. What changes? This perfect existence in Eden, how does it shift? The source points to one really key moment, doesn't it? God gives them the single rule, don't eat from that specific tree. If you do, you'll die. Seems straightforward enough.
It does, but then comes a complication. And it raises that question. Who or what was the serpent that talks to Eve? The source is quite specific here. It wasn't just a clever animal. It was an unseen spirit person, an angel who had gone bad, identified as Satan. And he twists the narrative, doesn't he? Tells Eve, no, you won't die. Actually, you'll become like God, implying gaining some forbidden knowledge or independence.
And Eve buys it, she eats the fruit, then gives some to Adam, and he eats it too. Simple act, huge consequences. The source says because they disobeyed, boom, they lose their home in Eden. Right away.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, the so what for humanity, well, life gets tough outside the garden. The source talks about a hard life, dealing with thorns, thistles, working hard just to eat, and the ultimate outcome. They started to die. And critically, this wasn't just for them. Sickness, aging, death. This whole package, the text says, gets passed down to their children too.
And speaking of children, things go downhill fast there too, right? Cain and Abel. This is where we see the first major human conflict in the story. Abel's described as the good one, loved God. Cain, not so much. Described as bad, didn't love his brother. And the source says Cain gets angry because God prefers Abel's offering. So he tricks Abel, lures him out to a field, and kills him. It's brutal.
Yeah, it is. And God's response is to punish Cain by sending him away, banishing him. But this incident, it's like a signpost, isn't it? It shows how that initial disobedience is already corrupting human relationships, right in the first family. And it doesn't stop there. The source mentions later many bad people trying to kill another figure, Enoch, and that the whole earth became filled with violence. What's fascinating here is the text suggests Satan was actively working, finding new ways to push people towards doing bad things. It's a picture of escalating corruption.
Okay, let's unpack this next part because it's Well, it's pretty wild. Before the Great Flood, the source talks about giants on the earth. And we're not just talking about unusually tall people, are we? The source explains these were actually angels, angels who came down from heaven, allied with Satan, and somehow took on human bodies.
Exactly, that's the explanation given. And it gets even more specific. These angels, in human form, married women, and their children, their offspring, are described as growing bigger and bigger and getting stronger and stronger. These are the giants. And crucially, they're labeled as bad. They would hurt people, actively trying to force everyone else to be bad too.
Hmm.
It paints a picture of uh, extreme corruption and violence being driven by these powerful beings.
Yeah.
It definitely raises a question about the moral climate, doesn't it? What does this specific origin story for the giants tell us about how bad things had gotten before the flood?
Right. And in the middle of all this escalating violence and these giant-related problems, the source highlights Noah. He stands out. He's described as a good person, totally unlike most people around him. So God decides, okay, I'm saving Noah, his family, and a bunch of animals from the destruction that's coming.
And the task given to Noah is just monumental. Build this massive ark. The source says it took a long time, which makes sense given the scale. He gets detailed instructions. Bring 2 of every kind of animal, male and female. Oh, and 7 pairs of some specific clean animals. Once it's built, Noah, his wife, his sons, their wives, and all those animals go inside the ark.
Then the source describes the flood itself. It's quite vivid. People outside the ark just didn't believe Noah. They kept laughing, apparently. But then the rain starts, described as sudden hidden water pouring down for 40 days and 40 nights, nonstop. Eventually, the water covers everything, the whole earth, even the mountains, the rocks, totally submerged, and the door to the ark. The source makes a point of saying it was closed tight by Jehovah, using that specific name for God, meaning it was too late for anyone else. Divine intervention sealed it.
hmm And the water just keeps rising as the ark is floating on top of this global ocean. And what about the giants? The source is explicit. The giants were gone. They died, along with their mothers, their fathers, everyone else outside the ark. And here's that interesting distinction again. They're called not really human people. They were angels who had taken physical form. After dying in the flood, the text says they went back to heaven as angels, but specifically calls them angels of Satan. So they returned to the spirit realm, but as fallen angels. This flood, it truly covered the whole world described in the narrative.
So after this world-altering flood, what happens next? What does the recovery look like? The source says about 5 months after the flood started, the water levels began to drop and the ark eventually came to rest on a mountaintop. Noah didn't just rush out, though. He sent out birds, first a raven, then doves a few times, until finally a dove came back having found a dry place. That was the signal. So Noah, his family, all the animals, they finally leave the ark. They'd been inside for, wow, more than a year.
Yeah, quite an ordeal. And connecting this to the bigger picture, this is where God makes a significant promise, according to the source. A covenant with humanity, really. He promises he would never again destroy all people and animals by flood, a very solemn vow. And to seal it, to be a constant reminder, he gives a sign. The rainbow, that beautiful arc in the sky, becomes the symbol of this promise.
Okay, so humanity gets a fresh start. Many years go by, Noah's sons have kids, their kids have kids. The earth starts filling up with people again. But then, here we go again, a new kind of challenge emerges. The source introduces Nimrod, a great-grandson of Noah, and he's painted as, well, not a great guy, a bad man, it says, who sets himself up as a king to rule over other people. And specifically, he's described as not like God. There's an opposition there.
Right. And this leads directly into the story of the Tower of Babel. So why build this tower? What was the motivation? What's fascinating here is the context. Everyone spoke the same language. They were unified. Nimrod apparently saw this as an opportunity. He wanted to keep everyone together under his rule. So he tells them, let's build a city and a huge tower, one that reaches right up to the heavens. The goal, to be famous, to make a name for themselves. But the source says God wasn't pleased with this plan. Why? Because God's intention, according to the text, was for people to spread out, feel the whole earth, not just cluster in one place, building monuments to their own ambition. It was seen as defiance, as self-glorification, instead of following the divine plan.
Wow. We've really covered a lot of ground there, haven't we? From the absolute beginning in BibleStories.pdf creation, Adam and Eve in that garden, their fateful choice. Then the first conflict with Cain and Abel, those mysterious giants turning up, the massive great flood that just wiped the slate clean. And then the restart, the new world, that rainbow promise, followed pretty quickly by human ambition again with the Tower of Babel. It's quite a narrative arc.
It really is. And what stands out, I think, is that consistent thread running through it all. this interplay of choices and their consequences. You see these recurring themes: creation, order, and disobedience, messing things up, judgment, but also new beginnings and the reestablishment of humanity. It's all woven together in these stories.
So here's something to maybe leave you thinking about. How might these ancient stories, with all their really vivid details about creation, rebellion, judgment, floods, giants, towers, new starts, how might they still, even today, influence how people view human nature, maybe divine will, and just our place in the grand scheme of things?